Misty, switching over to the legal side of things, let's listen quickly to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem from Saturday.
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism.
And similarly, Stephen Miller, he called him an assassin on X. Legally here, what are the ramifications of statements like that from such high levels of the administration, Misty?
The most immediate ramification is a real big question mark as far as the veracity of any investigation, because what it seems to be is conclusion first and investigate later, which is the opposite of what you would generally see in a case like this. You're talking about an investigation that would usually take weeks, if not months, but with making these statements where it seems to be determinations of fact have already been made before conducting that investigation, there becomes a lot of question marks about whether or not it is being done thoroughly, properly, and most important, independently.
And Misty, I know the AG is taking this to court. There's a federal court now involved. What could we see from a federal judge here, and will that hold weight in Minnesota?
So there's two different hearings that took place today relating to issues before the federal court. One specifically, Gotti, relates to this issue of preservation of evidence. So the Attorney General and other prosecutorial agencies in Minnesota asked a judge for a temporary restraining order, meaning that the government, the DOJ, has to immediately preserve all evidence, cannot destroy or manipulate that. Arguments were heard on that today, and what was pointed out in court by Minnesota was deviations from typical protocols, including those public statements. The judge is yet to rule on that issue, but we'll be likely seeing a decision coming soon.
And Jim, real fast, circling back to what you were saying about the gun, and again, I know that this is speculation online, but just staying with some of that vein, if it does appear as though this gun misfired or there was some sort of fire and then there was contagion shooting, does that change the course of the investigation?
No, really, you're not supposed to just shoot because you hear a gunshot. What can change is the agent who fired can say, you know, I perceived a threat because I heard a gunshot. I first heard gun, 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 then I heard a gunshot, and so I perceived a high-level threat. The problem with all that scenario is the medical examiner professional that the Washington Post interviewed and published said he saw 4 holes in Mr. Pretti's back. And on the video, the agent who's firing first is behind him, and he shoots. There's a shot, and then there's 3 more shots. Now, are all those 4 shots from his gun? That's going to be easy to determine. And are all those 4 bullets from him? Or is there an accidental discharge on the street from this weapon? It's a single action, 1911 style model 6-hour pistol. All those pistols, you know, they're single action. If a round's carried in the chamber, if there's no safety on or something, it could easily discharge if you touch the trigger. Of course, all those semi-automatic single actions can be like that. But often citizens will carry them with no round in the chamber. But that's an easily discernifiable fact. Let me just close with this, Gotti. I think DHS has lost the public writ large because they made statements that don't coincide with the multiple videos that are out there. And when you lose that, you got to try to get that back. And they should get it back for their agents. So this is a truthful, objective investigation. And the only way to get that back is to include the BCA in the investigation and another federal agency not in Homeland Security. So it could be a Justice Department agency like FBI and BCA, because you've lost credibility by making statements that don't look like what people are looking at. And that hurts you. So you want to get that credibility back as the department, as ICE, as Customs, Border Patrol, and you want to stand by your people, of course, but you want the facts to rule. Let's have objective facts so that prosecutors can make, you know, cogent, objective decisions in what should happen going forward.
Jim, there's the credibility aspect, and then there's the whole debate right now about constitutional rights and the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. Second Amendment is something that the Trump administration has argued strongly for. I mean, Misty, legally, we see these things coming into play in the public discourse, but where do they come into the legal world?
So this is the other hearing we actually had today, Gotti, which relates to Minnesota, the state and local government saying that they want ICE out. Now, the federal government says that under the Second Amendment, the president, the executive branch, has the constitutional authority to execute federal law enforcement actions. And so a court should not have anything to say about it, and the states do not have any power to tell the federal government how to do that. Now, the argument that that Minnesota has raised is that this is actually to coerce them into the federal government's agenda. So that is another issue that's currently before the court.
Misty Marris and Jim Kavanaugh, really appreciate your guys' expertise. Thank you so much.